live in our Sportsnet 960 downtown studios. Just finished off doing the show, and Ryan Pike is with us from his satellite studio. First time since the deadline, Pike, that we have done an edition of Flames Nation live. There's my volume's a little bit louder, and you can hear me a little better. We do our first show since the deadline. We've got all kinds of on the ice things to talk about with the Flames, and we've got big arena news, and we've got all of your questions on the live chat. So we've got lots to get into. Who's in with us? We got Shane, we got Jason, Mike, Josh, Steven, Ron, Justin, Ryan, all in. Looks like Pike's watching it. Are you watching hockey right now? What are you doing? Are you watching the Heat game? Is that what you got going on?
A little bit. I had to turn the volume down because they're not doing great tonight. But I don't know. It's a development league.
I just see Ryan on the chat's like, Pike's watching hockey. It's like, oh yeah, look at that. He's not even looking at the camera. Good stuff. Okay. We have got nothing but things to talk about. Like, we have not had a show in a while, so it's been a while. So I guess first of all, more than anything else, there's no shortage of topics. We definitely it's all of a sudden busy and interesting in Flamesland. Hey.
Well, I mean, there's a couple of new prospects. Like we haven't talked about Walker Duer. We haven't talked about Emil Heineman, whose season just ended like today in Sweden. The departure of Sam Bennett after 7 very eventful seasons in the organization. The departure of Big Safe Dave to the Leafs, and then like this is how weird a week it is. Big Safe Dave flew to Toronto
with
on
the team.
Yeah, like my big question is like, who did he sit with? Did he sit alone? Did they have to change the seating arrangements because he's not in the team anymore? Like I assume Sean O'Brien and the staff had to sort of alter the existing seating arrangements because you're gonna have the other team's goalie sit with your guys. Like what a year, man! It's. I was joking with you before we came on. This has been an absolute year of a week. Like
I know.
The most noteworthy thing is suddenly like a week ago the Flames playoff hopes and dreams seemed like completely magical and imaginary, and now they're not out of the woods yet, but their magic number is starting to get closer and closer to what their tragic number is, and we could be in for a really interesting last month of the season.
We could be. That's what you're. I guess that's what some Flames fans are hoping for, and this is kind of the overall dilemma of being a Flames fan right now. Let me tell you, Flamesnation Live's underway with Pat Steinberg and Ryan Pike. We're brought to you, as always, by our friends at Deuce Vodka. Check them out at your local liquor store, and if they don't have Deuce Vodka for you at your local liquor store, make sure you yell at them so that they do bring Deuce in. So let's start with the dilemma of being a Flames fan. Let me read you a couple of messages just to frame it. So here's one from Jordan. I'm bummed that we're playing better now. I like winning hockey, but I like good first-round picks. And then this one, 2 messages later from Justin. Isn't this exciting, guys? They've played exceptionally well versus Montreal this season. What happens if they win these last 4 versus Montreal? It's a really uncomfortable spot to be in if you're a Flames fan, Pike, because on the one hand, your team, I would like to very much classify, they still have slim playoff hopes, but there's a little bit more hope with 3 straight wins and a head-to-head win yesterday over Montreal. But there's also this feel that, okay, well, we've seen this movie before. They go on a run, and then they miss by 3 points, and they've screwed up their draft positioning. And so if you're a Flames fan, I think there's a lot of conflicted Flames fans right now with, okay, well, what's better? What should we do here?
Well, I mean, you and I are old suckers. I think the only guy on the team who's older than us is Mark Giordano. So we can speak from experience, in our mid-30s. In 2002, 2003, Daryl Sutter came in mid-season, and the team was, in a word, bad. Like, there's no way to dress it up. They had Jerome McGinley and a bunch of dudes. And Daryl Sutter came in, and they figured out a way to play a style. And it took the bulk of the team the majority of the rest of the season to figure their crap out. And by the end of the season, they were playing pretty well. And then when they started the season in 2003-04, they had some injury issues. Roman Turek was hurt. Jamie McLennan and I believe Danny Sabrin were the goalie tandem for a little bit because of injuries. And then they brought in Mika Kiprasov, and things just clicked. But the Flames in 03-04 were playing pretty good hockey that was elevated by a really good goalie. So if you're the type of person who goes, well, long term, you just want the team to be good, I don't think one top 10 draft pick is going to, if you think there's structural issues with how the team is built, one top 10 draft pick probably won't solve all your problems. But you figure out how to play the way you need to play over the last 13 games. Like, if they're going to make it or not, they're probably going to be playing playoff style hockey from here on out. And so I think that could potentially do as much good, if not more good, in the short term. The short term being 2-3 years when as long as Daryl Sutter's contract is. I think that does you more good than getting outside, unless you're getting like one of the top 2-3 picks with the Flames draft luck in the last lottery luck that is in the last 15-20 years. They probably weren't going to be getting Matthew Beniers or one of the top guys. They were probably going to be drafting 6, 7, 8. So I don't know. I can see it both ways. I'm a draft guy, Patty. You and I have covered a couple drafts together. The draft is super fun. You're selling hope, but let's be also honest here. The Flames have been in the mushy middle the last few years, and who's playing on the team next year probably? Connor Zary and Jacob Pelche, guys they've gotten when they've been in the mushy middle. So if you think your scouts are worth a damn, I think it's still better off trying to win and trying to make it rather than not. That's just me though.
I get it from both sides. I really do. I think that there are legitimate arguments on both sides to this one, because if you want your team to win a Stanley Cup and be a team, you want your team to be Tampa, you want your team to be Pittsburgh or Washington or Vegas or one of those teams that are perennially near the top and every year you feel like you've got a chance at winning the Stanley Cup, well, then you got to go in a different direction. But at the same time, if you just want to see your team play playoff games, well, this could be a fun finish. And tanking and absolute slogs through the mud are no fun. So I get it from both sides. I really do. Where Sports Club Stats, Dom at The Athletic, both have the Flames right now at 7% to make the playoffs. That's their statistical number by their models, both different models, but that's where they have the Flames. Where are you on Calgary's actual chances to make the playoffs?
Based on how they're playing and the strength of schedule, I'm thinking like at most 20%, like a 1 in 5 chance. Because I think on the Sportsnet broadcast last night, and as an aside, I watched we had the Montreal feed because it was a Montreal game. I like the Montreal broadcast team. I miss Rick and Kelly. Uh, that's just me though. But on the broadcast, they sort of showed the strength of schedule, and I was talking to my dad yesterday after the game. I'm like, they're playing pretty good. I still don't like their chances. And his rejoinder to me was, yeah, but I mean they got an awful lot of Montreal or a lot of Edmonton and Toronto here on out, and Flames got a lot of Vancouver. They've got some Ottawa, and they've got 4 more. The Flames have 13 games left, 4 against Vancouver, who are not good, and joking aside, they have a lot of stuff to figure out because there's no way in hell the Vancouver team is ever going to be 100% for the rest of the season. Like, let's just call it spade a spade. Ottawa's Ottawa, and Montreal seem to be finding ways to lose. So if you're the Flames, you have a more favorable schedule than Montreal, and you've dug yourself a pretty sizable hole by the way they played and how slow they were to react to when they made the coaching change. You're what, 60% of the season done, 65, 70%. I'm not good at fractions, but it hasn't been very long. I think Daryl will end up coaching something like 25 games, 28 games, something like that, less than 30.
I think when he was brought in, there were 32 games left, if I remember correctly, and I think he's going to coach 30.
Yeah, because the 2 games were Huskers games.
Yeah.
So yeah, and the Flames had Daryl mentioned to us yesterday, they had 3 games of practice, or three out of the first 4 days were practice days. Then they went on that run where they won 3 in a row, and then they didn't really have much practice, and guys sort of got some bad habits and bad luck. It's basically the Flames who looked pretty good but always made 1 or 2 boneheaded mistakes that ended up in the back of the net. So it was a combination of bad execution and bad luck. But the last 4 games, it's been the Flames playing pretty well, and the bad luck has sort of disappeared. I think they haven't had really neither good nor bad luck. I think you looked at how they played the last 3 games, and you go, yeah, they play like this the next 13 games. They might not make it. They might make it. I think at the very least they'll be playing meaningful games well into May, which sounds weird on paper and will probably be weird, especially because the other division's playoffs might be going when these guys are still fighting for a spot. But it's at the very least, this is a team that will be making life a little bit interesting for everybody. And I think if you're the type of person who goes, well, I still don't like the team, if you want them to be able to get value for the players, like we just did a 7-game segments, and Sam Bennett had a hell of a last 6 games with the Flames, and I think the fact he had a hell of a lot of 6 games with the Flames allowed them to get effectively 2 second-round picks for him. If he had sucked the last 15 games, they probably wouldn't have gotten as much. So if you're thinking, well, you want them to get something good for Gaudreau or Monahan or whoever, it's a lot better off to have Gaudreau and Monahan look good down the stretch and play meaningful games that you can, talk to other GMs and sell, rather than have them just sort of go through the 15-game death march and then, everybody just sort of go home and sort of hide in their houses until vaccination time. So I don't know. I'm like you though. You can see the value either way, but I think from an asset management standpoint, you're better off having them play useful games at the end.
Well, and I think we can all admit Montreal is very much, at least from a standing standpoint, they're in the driver's seat here. They control destiny far more than Calgary controls destiny. Now, in saying that, the fact they do play 4 head-to-head games does put Calgary still somewhat in control of their destiny, but the games played situation is still in Montreal's favor. Schedules, absolutely. How has Calgary done so far this year against Ottawa? So it's not like you can dive that much in to strength of schedule, at least in my opinion, and others would be different. But Montreal to me is still on the driver's seat, and the most likely scenario is Montreal, who I believe is vulnerable to either Calgary or Vancouver. But the most likely scenario is Montreal makes it just based on the hole that Calgary has dug themselves. That is the most probable situation based on the way things have gone, based on just how the numbers work. But I do absolutely believe there's far more sense of optimism now. It's not just the fact that they've won the 3 games. It's the fact that they've played pretty well in those 3 games and have looked like a pretty decent team in the wins over Edmonton, Toronto, and Montreal. So I don't think the door is closed, and I do not think that there's no chance. I still think it's a slim chance. I'm kind of 1 in 5. I'm with you in that regard too. And what I'm really interested in is Montreal. Like, are they better than what we just saw from them on Wednesday? Because they were not very good on Wednesday. And Montreal has done nothing for me since the Dominique Ducharme hiring. Nothing. And I think they're vulnerable. They're without their heart and soul in Gallagher. They're without their number 1 goalie in Price. They're not a great team to begin with. They are thin and fairly you can win a lot of matchups if you just go paper versus paper when it comes to their center ice group. I don't love Montreal. I think they're a vulnerable group. But are they vulnerable enough for Calgary to be able to make up all that ground? The fact they've got these head-to-head games, the fact that Calgary's 4 out of 5 against them this year would lead you to believe that they are. So I'm really curious. It's less about my faith in the Flames and what I think the Flames are that keeps the door open for me. It's more about my lack of faith in Montreal, because as of right now, unless they start to prove differently, I don't buy them as a high-end hockey team. I think there are 3 teams that are clearly better that I trust more than Montreal: Winnipeg, Toronto, and Edmonton. I put in different tiers than Montreal and have for quite some time.
And honestly, if you're going to be if you're a poolie, you're going to be going to DFO and all the other sites trying to load up on for the playoffs, and if you have a playoff pool going, I'd bet heavy on Toronto, because they're going to be playing either Montreal, a Montreal team that is absolutely caught fire in a bad way, like they're taking on water down the stretch, and they're going to limp into the playoffs one or the other. Or you're going to play potentially a Calgary team that has killed themselves to make the playoffs. And I think whoever makes it is going to be slim pickings in the first round for the other team. But that said, I've been wrong before. But if I'm Toronto, I'm looking at this battle down at the bottom, being like, great, there's going to be scraps to pick up in a few weeks.
I see a lot of Maple Leafs fans saying, I'd rather play Montreal because Calgary's played Toronto pretty well this year, and because if Calgary's going to make it, they're going to have to go on quite the run to be able to do so. Now, that's not always, I think sometimes you have to be hot entering the playoffs, so that's not always true. But at the same time, it can be true. So it absolutely can be a thing. It's fascinating. It's fascinating. They still have a very uphill climb. They are still not as in control of their situation as Montreal is, but the door is open for them. It absolutely is. We talked about Bennett. I'm with you. I think that they got great return on Bennett at the trade deadline. I really do. More than I thought they were going to get, and I thought that they should have moved him. They do, and they get a second and a recent second-round pick drafted player. So I thought that was good. And I thought the return on Riddick was pretty solid too, knowing that there were next to no landing spots for him. So I thought that all things considered, we went into the deadline, Pike, and said if they can make 2 deals, that'll be a successful deadline. They made 2 deals, and I thought they got decent return on both of them. So I would say it is a successful deadline for the Flames.
Yeah, and honestly, they're the deals that you probably hope they would have made. I mean, would there have been a value in punting on one of their innumerable league minimum or close to forwards or depth defensemen? Yeah, you could have gotten maybe a 7th or something for them, or like it'd be better to get something than nothing. But I think Derek Ryan's a guy potentially you might want to bring back. He's been like half. I think he's read the tea leaves of where things are going. So if you can get him back for a year or 2 at like $1.5 million, or so, I think if you can get him for sub 2, sure. And I think having him around right now gives you the opportunity to sort of have that conversation. And let's be honest, like they have to have a couple guys to expose who are under contract. One of them is probably going to be Milan Lucic. Like I'm sure if you're talking to Derek Ryan, best case, I'm sure he'd love to be here for another year or 2. Worst case, if he happens to get picked up by Seattle and he plays in his home state, I'm sure there's worse things in the world for that guy. So I think the trades they didn't make, I think were smart trades, and the trades they made, I mean, David Riddick wasn't going to be back, and he was a very expensive Plan B. And might as well get something for him. And a 3rd round pick in 2022, which is a good draft. And the cool thing now is, if you're a draft guy like I am and you are, Flames have 4 picks in the first 3 rounds this year, and then 5 in the first 3 rounds next year. And the 2022 draft is the draft that we feel like you'll actually know things about the OHL prospects in 2022, whereas right now the OHL has played exactly as much hockey this year as you and I have. So
yeah.
So this is a weird draft. This is the draft where there's a few teams that are absolutely going to clean up if they have a handle on some of the guys. This is going to be the year where a lot of teams really try to load up on picks. So it's if you're looking for the future, I think they did a nice job managing over the last few weeks or so.
Okay, as we wrap up, what's going on with the arena, Pike? Nobody knows more about this stuff than you do.
Nothing's going on.
Please update us as to what's going on with this royally screwed situation.
Oh, Patrick, where shall we begin? So, effectively, the last time we actually had news about this was back in June. The team that would be designing the building. So, since then, they've been sort of designing it, and after you design it, you cost it out. So, anyone who's done a renovation or designing your house, you go, okay, here's what we want to build. How fancy you want that? And so you go through fanciness and you go through amenities you want. And the problem is in the last year, everything has gotten a lot more expensive because, if you're someone who's building something domestically, There's less lumber, there's less steel, and it's harder to get the stuff that exists. Lumber, particularly, have skyrocketed. So, if you're the Flames and you're the city and you sit down, you sit down, that'll cost about $550 million. And that's where they came up with the $550 million budget. What other buildings cost more or less what other buildings. But now that everything's a lot more scarce, everything's a lot more expensive. $550 million doesn't go nearly as far as it did. And 500 a year ago buy you what it did. Even 6 months ago. So figuring out, if they wait to a year, will the prices go back down? I think they're sort of having a hard look at precisely stuff they want in the building. So in the interim, they're sort of in a holding pattern. I don't know if there's an appetite right now. Twitter responses, based on my Twitter responses. I don't know if there's an appetite to really kick it. If the city kicks in more money, almost as a matter of course, kicking more money. So, I don't think they're really ruling out any options right now. The thing, because the city has done a lot of stuff in the Stampede Park area. Let's be completely honest. The Stampede Park area has been kind of a toilet. Pete, I love you to death, but it's a place in the city that's really, it is a park, and it is not a cool space on its own. And so what we're trying to do is, integrate it more with the city. How by Weedickville, the giant awkward, coming down because they're going to put 17th Avenue straight through. The awkward elevated LRT station with the stairs and where all the buskers and scalpers are, that's coming down because they're building, a ground level LRT where people can walk in. So there's more foot traffic. The old corral's gone. They're putting in that modern looking expand the showpiece of the area, and they want an arena there. The economics of what they do come down there for various events, games, concerts, conventions, conferences. So a lot of the city's plan. A lot of cool stuff down there, including an arena. There's an election. We'll see in October, and
I know.
There our colleagues at CTV, allegedly the Flames have really. Where would the city be put? Patty, if I say to you, hey, but what am I going to get for the $10,000? But you're trying to sell me a car. You give me a car, or me selling you a car is context there. So I think one of the agreements until something gets close to actually hitting council, where they had in 2019 out there is kind of asymmetric things, and I'm just going to tell people, just be really skeptical of everything you hear until it's officially presented. It's really hard to say what's the existing deal we have. If you don't want public money into public buildings, the standards of is like saying by the standards of getting punched in the face or the stomach. By the standards of arena deals, the existing arena deal is actually pretty decent. It's not perfect. It's not great. To a lot of people, the perfect deal would be the Flames paying for 100%. But that's not, unfortunately, the world we're living in. And Canadian cities and mid-sized to small markets, this is probably more or less what you could expect to. This is the best case scenario in terms of what's on paper. And until we get something else on paper, I'm going to be skeptical. I don't want to prejudge things, but I don't know. It's a weird situation right now. I think probably to the fall at this rate.
I think we're having some audio problems, so that's probably a good time to wrap it up. Apologies for the, I don't know what happened. Sometimes that happens when you're working with live streaming technology. So apologies for any audio connection or any audio issues we've had. It only started to happen. I could see it even with the levels. It only started to happen. But thank you for stopping by, everybody. For Pike, I'm Steinberg. We'll be back technical issues free next week on Flames Nation Live. Be well, everybody. We'll talk to you soon. Thank you so much.